The wind howled through the cracked window of Evelyn Harper's small cottage, carrying the scent of rain and betrayal. At 95, she had seen wars, recessions, and the slow decay of her once vibrant neighborhood, but nothing prepared her for the theft of her late husband's pocket watch. It was gone, stolen by the boy next door, whose laughter she'd once cherished like her own grandson's. Evelyn sat in her worn armchair, her gnarled hands trembling not from age but from the sting of violation. The watch wasn't just gold and gears. It was the last piece of her Henry, who'd carried it through Normandy and back. Its ticking a heartbeat she'd clung to for 50 years since his passing. She'd seen Tommy, the neighbor's 19-year-old, slipping out her back door that morning, his hoodie bulging with her treasure. The police had come and gone, their sighs heavy with pity for an old woman's loss, promising little. But Evelyn wasn't one to wait for promises. Her cottage, tucked at the edge of Willow Creek, was a time capsule of faded photographs and doilies, each corner whispering memories. She'd lived here since she was a bride, her life woven into its creaking floorboards. Tommy's family had moved in 5 years ago, and Evelyn had watched him grow from a shy kid to a restless teen, his eyes lately shadowed with something darker. She'd baked him cookies, mended his torn jackets, and listened to his dreams of escaping this dead-end town. And yet, he'd betrayed her. Evelyn rose, her knees protesting, and shuffled to the kitchen. She pulled a tin box from the pantry, its edges rusted but intact. Inside were letters, photos, and a small notebook where she'd written recipes, memories, and, lately, observations about Tommy. She'd noticed his late-night wanderings, the strangers he met behind the gas station, the way his mother's voice cracked when she spoke of him. Evelyn didn't judge. She'd seen too much of life to believe in simple villains. But the watch demanded justice, not the kind the police offered, but something deeper. She donned her coat, its wool heavy with age, and stepped into the dusk. The neighborhood was quiet, the streetlights flickering like uncertain stars. Tommy's house glowed faintly, his bedroom window cracked open. Evelyn's heart thudded, not with fear, but with purpose. She'd known loss before, her son to a car accident, her daughter to distance, her Henry to time, but she'd never let it define her. At 95, she was no fragile relic. She was a woman with a plan. The next morning, Evelyn knocked on Tommy's door. His mother, Karen, answered, her face a map of exhaustion. "Evelyn, I'm so sorry about the watch," she stammered. "Tommy he's been troubled. We'll make it right." Evelyn smiled, her eyes sharp. "I'd like to speak to him, dear." "Alone?" Karen hesitated but nodded, calling Tommy downstairs. He slouched in, his gaze avoiding hers, guilt etched in his hunched shoulders. "Tommy," Evelyn said, her voice steady, "you took something that wasn't yours. But I'm not here to scold. I'm here to offer you a choice." She pulled a small envelope from her pocket, its edges yellowed. Inside was a letter she'd written that night, not to the police, but to Tommy. "Read this," she said, handing it to him. "Then meet me at my house tonight. 7 o'clock. Tommy's eyes flickered with confusion, but he took the letter. Evelyn turned, her steps slow but deliberate, leaving him with the weight of her words. Back home, she sat by her fireplace, the empty space where the watch once rested a quiet ache. She didn't know if Tommy would come, but she'd planted a seed. The letter wasn't a threat or a plea, was a story, her story, of Henry, the watch, and the love that had carried her through decades of grief. She'd written of Tommy, too, of the boy she believed he could still be. That evening, a knock came. Tommy stood at her door, the letter crumpled in his hand, his eyes red. "Why didn't you turn me in?" he asked, voice breaking. Evelyn gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit," she said. "We're going to talk about what's really been stolen." Tommy sat, his hands fidgeting, the letter still clutched like a lifeline. Evelyn poured tea, the clink of porcelain filling the silence. She studied in the boy who'd once helped her weed her garden, now a stranger with secrets. "You didn't just take a watch, Tommy," she said, her voice soft but piercing. "You took a piece of my heart. But I think you've lost something, too." Tommy's jaw tightened, his eyes darting to the floor. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he muttered. "It was just easy. I needed money." Evelyn leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. "For what?" "The truth, now." He hesitated, then spilled it. Debts to a local dealer, a spiral of bad choices, a desperation to escape his mother's disappointment. Each word was a confession, raw and jagged. Evelyn listened, her heart aching for the boy she'd watched grow. She'd seen this before, not in Tommy, but in her own son, Michael, who'd battled demons before the accident took him. She pushed the memory aside and handed Tommy a photo from the tin box. It was Henry, young and grinning, the watch glinting on his vest. "This was my husband," she said. "He carried that watch through a war. It wasn't the gold that mattered, it was what it witnessed." Tommy's shoulders slumped, guilt pooling in his eyes. Evelyn didn't stop. "You're not a thief, Tommy. You're lost. But lost things can be found." She slid a small key across the table. "This opens my shed. There's work there, tools, paint, things I can't manage anymore. You'll earn what you owe, not in money, but in time. With me." He stared at the key, disbelief warring with something softer. Before he could answer, a sharp knock interrupted. Karen burst in, her face pale. "Evelyn, the police called. They found the watch at a pawn shop. Tommy's prints were on it." Her voice cracked, torn between anger and shame. Tommy froze, his breath shallow. Evelyn, unflinching, stood and placed a hand on Karen's arm. "Let me handle this," she said. The police arrived, 2 officers with stern faces and notepads. Evelyn invited them in, her calm a stark contrast to Tommy's panic. "I don't want to press charges," she said firmly. The officers exchanged glances. "Ma'am, he admitted to the theft," one said. "We have evidence." Evelyn nodded. "I know, but I'm asking you to let me deal with him my way." The lead officer, a woman named Detective Ruiz, raised an eyebrow. "With all due respect, Mrs. Harper, he broke the law." Evelyn smiled faintly. "At 95, I've learned there's more than one kind of justice. Give me a week with him. If you're not satisfied, do what you must." Ruiz hesitated, then nodded, sensing something in Evelyn's resolve. Tommy was sent home, the key still in his pocket. Evelyn spent the night planning. She'd turn her shed into a projecta garden bench, something tangible to rebuild trust. But the next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Clara, a retired librarian who'd lived across the street for decades. Clara, wiry and sharp-eyed at 80, carried a canvas bag and a knowing smile. "Heard about Tommy," she said. "I've got something to add to your plan." Clara revealed she'd been watching Tommy, too not out of suspicion, but concern. She'd seen him sketching in a notebook intricate designs of buildings and bridges. "He's got talent," Clara said, pulling out a sketchbook she'd found discarded in an alley. "He's throwing it away, Evelyn. Like he's throwing himself away." The twist hit Evelyn hard. Tommy wasn't just a troubled teen. He was a dreamer drowning in his own mistakes. Evelyn took the sketchbook, its pages alive with ambition. She saw a spark of the boy she'd known, buried under guilt and fear. That evening, she called Tommy back. He arrived, wary, the key dangling from his fingers. "We're not just fixing a shed," Evelyn said, handing him the sketchbook. "We're building something bigger. For you." The shed smelled of sawdust and old paint, its shelves cluttered with tools Evelyn hadn't touched in years. Tommy stood in the doorway, clutching his sketchbook, his eyes flickering between hope and doubt. Evelyn pointed to a pile of lumber. "We're building a bench," she said. "For the community garden. Your design's my rules." Tommy blinked, caught off guard. "You want me to design it?" Evelyn nodded. "Clara showed me your sketches. You've got a gift, boy. Don't waste it." She handed him a pencil and a blank page. "Start drawing." Tommy hesitated, then sat on an upturned crate, his pencil moving slowly at first, then with growing confidence. Evelyn watched, her heart swelling. She wasn't just giving him a task, she was giving him a purpose. Days passed, and the shed became their sanctuary. Tommy sketched, measured, and hammered, his hands steadier with each task. Evelyn shared stories of Henry's courage, his flaws, the way he'd rebuilt their lives after the war. Tommy listened, his guard lowering. "My dad left when I was 10, he admitted one afternoon, sawdust dusting his hair. Mom works double shifts. I thought I had to figure it out alone." Evelyn's eyes softened. "You're not alone, Tommy. You never were." She told him about Michael, her son, whose anger had once mirrored Tommy's. "He thought he had to fight the world, too. I couldn't save him, but I can try with you." Tommy looked away, but his grip on the hammer tightened, as if holding onto her words. The bench took shoppy, sturdy frame with carved details from Tommy's sketches, vines and stars etched into the wood. Neighbors noticed, stopping by to watch or offer tools. Clara brought coffee and sharp-tongued encouragement, her presence a quiet anchor. But not everyone approved. Karen, torn between gratitude and fear, confided in Evelyn one evening. "What if he messes up again?" she whispered. "What if this doesn't fix him?" Evelyn squeezed her hand. "It's not about fixing him. It's about showing him he's worth more than his mistakes." Karen nodded, tears brimming, but doubt lingered in her eyes. Evelyn felt it, too, a flicker of fear that her plan might falter. But she pushed it aside, focusing on the boy sanding wood in her shed, his face lit with focus she hadn't seen in years. Then came the twist. Detective Ruiz returned, unannounced, with news. The pawnshop owner had identified another item. Tommy had sold a locket, not Evelyn's, but belonging to Mrs. Delaney, another neighbor. Ruiz's voice was firm. "He's been stealing more than you thought, Mrs. Harper. I can't ignore this." Evelyn's heart sank, but she stood tall. "He's working on it," she said. "Give me more time." Ruiz crossed her arms. "You've got until the bench is done. Then we talk charges." The ultimatum hung heavy, but Evelyn saw it as a challenge, not a defeat. She called Tommy in, showed him the police report. His face crumpled. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," he said, voice breaking. "It was just stuff." Evelyn's voice was steel. "It's never just stuff, Tommy. Every piece has a story. You'll make this right, too." They worked late, the bench nearly complete. Tommy poured his guilt into the carvings, each line a silent apology. Evelyn watched, her resolve unwavering, but her body betrayed her. At 95, the long hours ached in her bones. One night, she stumbled, catching herself on the workbench. Tommy rushed to her side, his hands steadying her. "You okay, Mrs. Harper?" he asked, fear in his eyes. She smiled, patting his arm. "I'm tougher than I look. So are you." The community garden's dedication was set for the weekend. Evelyn and Tommy planned to unveil the bench, a symbol of redemption. But as the date neared, Evelyn felt a shift not in Tommy, but in herself. Her strength was fading, her breath shorter. She didn't tell him, but she wrote another letter, this one for the police, sealed in her tin box. It was her final move, one she hoped would outlast her. The community garden buzzed with neighbors, their voices mingling with the hum of cicadas. The bench stood at the center, its carvings gleaming under the morning sun. Tommy, in a clean shirt, stood beside Evelyn, his hands nervous but proud. Evelyn, frail but radiant, leaned on her cane, her eyes bright with purpose. The crowd gathered Karen, Clara, even Mrs. Delaney, whose locket Tommy had stolen. They waited for Evelyn's speech. She stepped forward, her voice clear despite her weakening frame. "This bench isn't just wood," she said. "It's a promise. A boy made mistakes, but he built something beautiful from them. That's what we Tao build. We mend. We forgive." The crowd murmured, some nodding, others skeptical. Tommy's cheeks flushed, but he stood taller, his sketchbook tucked under his arm. Detective Ruiz watched from the edge, her notepad closed. Evelyn had invited her, not to arrest Tommy, but to witness. Before the ceremony, Evelyn had slipped her the sealed letter from the tin box. Ruiz hadn't opened it yet, but her eyes softened as Evelyn spoke. The letter wasn't just a plea, it was a testament, detailing Tommy's work, his remorse, and Evelyn's belief in second chances. It also confessed her own secret. She'd known about her failing heart for weeks, but chose to spend her final days on Tommy. As the crowd clapped, Evelyn faltered, her cane slipping. Tommy caught her, his arm strong around her. Gasps rippled through the garden, but Evelyn waved them off, smiling. "I'm fine," she whispered, though her breath was shallow. She turned to Tommy. "Show them your sketches." He hesitated, then opened his book, revealing designs for more benches, a gazebo, a future he hadn't dared dream before. Mrs. Delaney approached, her locket gleaming at her throat. "I got it back," she said, her voice gruff but kind. "Tommy told me everything. I'm not pressing charges." The crowd stirred, whispers of surprise and approval. Clara grinned, nudging Evelyn. "You old fox," she murmured. "You planned this." Evelyn's eyes twinkled, but she said nothing, her strength ebbing. That evening, Evelyn sat in her armchair, Tommy at her side. The watch, returned from the pawn shop, ticked softly on the mantel. "You gave me back more than this watch," she said, her voice faint. "You gave me hope." Tommy's eyes welled. "I don't deserve this," he said. Evelyn took his hand. None of us do. That's why we give it anyway. The next morning, Evelyn didn't wake. The news spread through Willow Creek, a quiet grief settling over the neighborhood. Tommy found the tin box on her kitchen table, a note atop it in her spidery handwriting. Keep building, Tommy. For both of us. Inside were her recipes, photos, and a new sketchbook, its first page inscribed with his name. Detective Ruiz came to the cottage, the letter now open in her hand. She met Tommy's eyes, her voice gentle. She wrote this for you, and for us. She asked us to give you a chance, to let the bench be your sentence. Ruiz paused, her sternness gone. I've never seen anything like it. We're dropping the charges. The funeral was small, the garden bench draped in flowers. Tommy spoke, his voice steady, sharing Evelyn's stories and his own promise to keep her legacy alive. He enrolled in a community college, studying architecture, his sketches turning into plans for a revitalized Willow Creek. Karen watched, pride replacing her fear. Clara, ever the librarian, started a fund in Evelyn's name, ensuring Tommy's education. Years later, the bench remained, its carvings worn but enduring. Tommy, now a young man with a degree, returned to unveil a gazebo, his first project. He traced the vines he'd carved with Evelyn, her voice echoing in his heart. She'd been robbed, but she'd given him everything: a future, a family, a chance to be more than his mistakes.